What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into episode 215 of the CRW podcast here as we continue to get you prepared for spring football here at WVU as the roster builds, the coaching staff builds. There's been more transfers that have come in. West Virginia has done a hell of a job since we last met up with you guys on our podcast episode last week. As in that week's time, this staff has added 17 more transfers that are going to be joining the Mountaineers for spring football. We'll talk about those, and then the other 3 or 4 names that you may be on commitment watch for, maybe by the time that I put this out. I know the last time I put a podcast episode out, it was later that day. More transfers started to roll in. So hopefully maybe by the time you're hearing this, we've got good news on some of the names that we'll talk about that are still opportunities for West Virginia to still add to that transfer class, which already is bringing in 26 new transfers for the Mountaineers. We'll tell you the destination of some that have transferred out as well. And then I want to let you guys know about the early enrollees that are going to come into Morgantown and participate in spring football practice and be here early, kind of get a jump start on things here. Those young freshmen coming in to help out with the West Virginia football program's transition into the Rich Rod 2.0 era as we get close to the start of spring practice. We're just probably a couple months away or so, guys, now. So we're going to talk about that. And then West Virginia, of course, has updated the coaching staff yet again. More official announcements have come out. We've almost got the full staff out. We also have the reported title of another hire that's not yet official, maybe by the time you're hearing this. So we'll talk about all those things. And then I want to wrap up by talking about a little bit of WVU hoops as well. So that will kind of be our upcoming slate here for episode 215, where we update the football offseason happenings and discuss a little Mountaineer hoops towards the tail end as they're involved in a great season right now, currently ranked in the top 25. So I want to give them a little bit of the spotlight towards the tail end. But before we get there, we got to talk about these West Virginia football transfers that are coming in. What a job this staff has done remaking this roster, remaking the secondary, which is a key part, revitalizing that pass defense and having an improved defense at WVU is going to be a big thing that can help lead West Virginia to success in 2025. So let's talk a bit about the transfers that West Virginia has added in the past time since we did an update last week. Like we said, 17 new names are committed to join the Mountaineers for the upcoming season. Let's talk about them. All right, so when we last met with you guys, Ashton Woods was the last Mountaineer that committed, the linebacker from UNC. And like I said, since then, 17 new names have come in. We're going to discuss each one of these momentarily. But first, let me update the transfers out list from West Virginia because there's a couple things we need to discuss. I think previously we had discussed Abina Onwuka not entering the transfer portal as was previously reported he was going to do. Since then, West Virginia also has had offensive lineman Justin Terry withdraw from the portal, which is big. We knew West Virginia needed to continue to add players in the trenches. They've added 3 transfer offensive linemen we'll talk about in a second, but technically you get almost 4 offensive linemen in when you get Justin Terry to return and withdraw from the transfer portal. So that's the big news on that side of things. Otherwise, we have the destinations for most of the transfers out, save for 2 or 3 here. We got Will Dixon going to Rhode Island, TJ Crandall, the former Mountaineer corner, going to Oregon State. Josiah Trotter is heading to Missouri. Ryder Burton just recently announcing he's going to UAB. Sully Weedman going to UMass. Linebacker Trey Lathan, one of the few Mountaineers that is transferring in conference. West Virginia will see him again most likely as he'll be playing at Kansas. Same goes for Aiden Garnes, the defensive back transferring to Arizona in the Big 12. Offensive lineman Thomas Remack was the first to announce he was following former West Virginia offensive line coach Matt Moore, who's now the head coach there at VT. And then 2 others joined him. Kyle Altuner is heading to VT as well. And then most recently, Lucas Alston doing the same as you see here at the bottom of the list. Another West Virginia offensive lineman, Johnny Williams, he's heading to the Power Conference program as well, but he's going to Missouri in the SEC. And then the other in-conference transfer is Day Farmer as he heads to UCF, which is funny because that's the program he was originally committed to before West Virginia flipped him on signing day last year. C.J. Donaldson heads to Ohio State. Jaheim Joseph, the former West Virginia safety, will be playing at UNLV. Hudson Clement, of course, heading to Illinois. I think we've talked about that on a previous episode here. And then Traylon Ray recently committing to Ole Miss, going to the SEC. And I mentioned Altuner and Lucas going to VT. So that's the destinations of the Mountaineers that left. But coincidentally enough, West Virginia doing a great job in the portal, have more transfers coming in than they have going out. They already have 26 names, as I mentioned there, and 17 of those have come in the past week. What a job this staff has done. And let's lead it off with perhaps one of my very favorite of all of the transfer additions. You guys know when I had spoke about guys that West Virginia was targeting in the past, there was one guy that was very high on my wish list throughout the process, and that was Cam Vaughn, the wide receiver from Jack State. And listen, he is super talented. There's many things to take into account here. For one, he's only been playing receiver for about 2 to 3 years currently. He was, a high school quarterback, came to Jack State. They redshirted him, taught him the position, wide receiver, and hey, they was like, he's kind of a natural at this. So this past season, he was a redshirt freshman. As a redshirt freshman, catches 48 balls, I believe it was, for over 800 yards. Let me pull up the exact numbers to make sure that I'm getting that correct for you guys. I believe that it's 48 receptions for 800 and some yards, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. Pretty close, 49 receptions for 804 yards and 5 touchdowns. And now, why is that significant, you ask? Well, because West Virginia has not really had a standout wide receiver one put up numbers like that at all in the Neal Brown era, guys. I went back and researched this just to be 100% sure on it. But last year, Hudson Clement was the leading receiver, 741 yards for West Virginia. Then you go back to 2023, the leading receiver on the team, Devin Carter, 501 yards. And then you go 2022 in the Neal Brown era, leading receiver, Sam James, 745 yards. And then you go 2021. The leading receiver for the Mountaineers was Winston Wright, 688 yards. 2020, the second year of the Neal Brown era, your leading receiver that year was also Winston Wright. He had 553 yards. And then the first year Neal Brown was here in 2019, Sam James was the leading receiver with 677 yards. So Cam Vaughn at Jack State, and as I said, only really his first year playing the position, as he was a redshirt freshman, hadn't really played the position previously. Just a natural. 6'2", 190 pounds, great speed, was a deep ball threat, also did great work after the catch on screens, and of course a great blocker, what you need in the Rich Rod system. So has experience in the Rich Rod offense, and despite being experienced at the position, that shows you his potential, the fact that he put up 804 yards, which is more than any receiver at WVU has put up in the last 6 seasons. You have to go back to Dana Holgerson's final year in 2018 to see a West Virginia receiver put up that kind of numbers. And that's in a Rich Rod offense that's super run heavy, so he was obviously wide receiver one there. I believe he'll be wide receiver one at WVU as well. A pickup that I was really hoping to see the Mountaineers get. Was not an easy add for West Virginia because a lot of people were after him, obviously, with that type of potential, super high ceiling, and I'm very excited West Virginia adds him, and you're going to see him make a lot of plays for the Mountaineers in 2025. I truly believe that. We've also added kicker Ethan Head out of Tulane. Bit of a mixed bag with his, field goal kicking. I think he missed a couple extra points. He only missed one field goal, if I'm not mistaken. But really, he has a strong leg, and he's also a guy that's young, so he's going to develop over his career here if he stays throughout his career. But he's mainly being recruited to be the kickoff specialist first and foremost, which is where that big leg comes in handy. Now, he's going to have a chance to compete for the place kicking job, as West Virginia will be replacing Michael Hayes, replacing all their special teamers besides Ollie Straw, and Ethan Head will have a chance there. But I think that he has... I would be pretty confident in saying he's the kickoff specialist next season. Then we've added Johnny Pascuzzi, a tight end from Iowa, which obviously Iowa, can be called tight end U. If you're getting a tight end from there, that's big news, and I know a lot of fans always clamor for these power conference transfers. We've gotten a few of them in this past week. Johnny Pascuzzi being one. He was down the depth chart a little bit at Iowa, but that's no surprise with how they recruit the tight end position. Did have one big play on the season, a reception for 40 yards. But when you go watch his tape, what really stands out is this guy is an absolute hammer of a run blocker. He's going to be a great fit in the Rich Rod offense. And when you watch that Jack State offense last season, they really used a lot of, two tight end sets at times. So I think you'll see Johnny Pascuzzi on the field as a blocker, as one of those. Now, who will be the other one? That's what we have to talk about moving forward. West Virginia returning some bodies at the tight end position, the Greg Genrosses, the Jackson Marcos, Noah Braham still on the roster. I think that Jackson Marcos is a good candidate. You've also already brought in Jacob Barrick from Jack State, who we talked about earlier. But Johnny Pascuzzi, I think with his run blocking capabilities, has a good chance to have a role in the West Virginia offense in 2025 as the Mountaineers add him. And then now is where we start to talk about the defensive back commits that came in hot and heavy. You see right here 5 consecutive names. The next 5 that we're going to talk about are all defensive backs, and there's still 2 more that we're going to talk about that are the most recent additions via the transfer portal at the time that I'm recording this. So like I said, West Virginia, Rich Rod, Zach Alley, hell-bent on improving the West Virginia secondary, as needs to be the case. It's been an issue for a while now. Defense has been an issue overall at WVU, really probably across the Neil Brown and Dana Holgerson eras, so you really don't want that to be an issue here in the Rich Rod 2.0 era, and they're trying their best to bring in and really completely remake West Virginia's pass defense, which they needed to do. You lost pretty much all your starters at your safety positions. You had to fulfill those roles. And then at corner, you don't bring back a ton of experience. Jacoby Spells will be a senior, but he hasn't really played a couple of starts under his belt. So you needed bring in some guys. You need to go get some dudes. And I think West Virginia did just that. Jordan Walker, a safety from Chattanooga, is going to be a guy that's got a chance to get into the mix right away. Don't let where he's coming from fool you. I think he's a hidden gem, and I think he's got a chance to play at WVU and play a lot in 2025. Then you get to a couple of Jack State guys. Derek Carter is a defensive back. He's going to be a corner that's going to play for the Mountaineers. Now, at Jack State, he did play a ton there as an outside corner. West Virginia, like I said, needs bodies there at outside corner. You got Jacoby Spells. You potentially have KK Tarnew, who we've talked about previously, utilizing the new year where junior college doesn't count, so he has 1 more year of eligibility remaining and will return to WVU, and that's big because he was at Jack State in 2023 and played outside corner when the defensive coordinator was Zach Alley, so I think he's going to factor in. So Derek Carter's going to be there. Where will he be on the depth chart? That remains to be seen. Both of these corner spots are up in the air, but he's going to be a guy that has a chance to compete. Is he a day one starter? I wouldn't say that necessarily because West Virginia's added some really good corners, and we're going to talk about some of those momentarily. But coming over from Jack State with him is a guy that I would consider a day one starter in Fred Perry, the safety from Jack State, which is interesting to me the way that this one panned out, because I thought early on that West Virginia didn't have a chance at him. Seemed like he wasn't really interested in the Mountaineers too much, and then as time went on, he seemed to kind of grow in interest to where he came in on a visit, over this past week, and then ultimately announces, of course, he's coming to WVU, which is a big pickup, was a star there at Jack State across his time there. And what you're getting that I really love about Fred Perry is you're getting a guy that's a headhunter. He's going to come downhill. He's going to hit you. He's kind of got that swagger to his game. He's got that Carl Joseph-esqueness to his game, if you want to say that even. Across his time there at Jack State, 257 tackles, so, racked up a ton, 18 TFLs, 3 sacks, 2 picks, 6 forced fumbles, which is what I like. He'll come punch the ball out as well, and 10 pass deflections. And I really like the way that he plays. I think that he's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how West Virginia uses these safeties, who's going to play strong, who's going to play free, who's going to be kind of at that cheetah more in the box. Fred Perry can certainly play in the box. He did that some at Jack State, and I think that that's kind of probably more of his strength, is probably getting him closer to the line of scrimmage, letting him come in on some blitzes, letting him try and stuff the run game, let him set the edge. Not that he can't cover, but I don't necessarily think you want him to be the free safety, the deep cover man on this team, but who knows? We'll see how it shakes out. I trust Zach Alley's judgment and how he uses these pieces, but I think Fred Perry, you can pencil him in as a starter on this defense somewhere in 2025, and the same goes for, I talked about Cam Vaughn as maybe my highest on my wish list, and then Michael Coates, when it popped up, we were getting a visit for him. I didn't even mention him as one of the highest on my wish list because I felt like it was so pie-in-the-sky pipe dream that West Virginia would even get Michael Coates Jr., who was one of the best cornerbacks remaining in the transfer portal. Knew he would be probably very expensive, and the fact that West Virginia had him scheduled to come in on a visit, and then he was scheduled to go to Ole Miss afterwards, the Mountaineers get him on campus, sell him so hard, and blow him away so much that West Virginia gets his commitment before he even goes to Ole Miss, cancels that visit, signs with the Mountaineers, and like I said, huge pickup here that, to me, I think if I'm ranking, my favorite pickups thus far on offense, it'd be Cam Vaughn. On defense, it would be Michael Coates Jr., because this is a guy that can come in. He's a day one starter, 100%. He's cornerback number 1, in my opinion. He can cover the opponent's best player if you need him to. He's good in zone. He can do it all. Some of his numbers from last season, pulling these off of his social media, 17 pass deflections, which led the nation, number 1 in the country in pass deflections. So he was top 5 in the country in interceptions, top 5 in the country in PFF coverage grade, top 5 in the country in pass deflections. So this is a guy that really super talented, highly sought after across the nation. Like I said, 4 interceptions, ranked 5th in the country. His overall PFF defensive rating was nearly an 84, which is incredible, which was top 15 in the country. And his coverage grade was nearly a 90, 89.2, top 5 in the country there in pass coverage grade, which is a huge upgrade for the Mountaineers, who only had one cornerback on their entire team last year who was even in the 70s in coverage grade. Everyone else was 60 or below. So if you're remaking the defense, you got to go out, you got to get dudes. And this is an absolute get for West Virginia. One of the best corners I've seen us bring in. When you go watch you look at his stats, you look at his grades, and you watch his tape, he really stands out. So Michael Coach Jr., an absolute huge home run grand slam addition to this transfer portal class thus far for West Virginia. I think, you get him and Fred Perry, back to back kind of there. You were like already mind blown. And then to see what West Virginia's done since then, it just took it to the next level. Can't say enough about the job this staff is doing with this transfer portal class. And then another defensive back that rounds out the 5 that came in here in quick succession for West Virginia, and that is a safety, another safety that I think probably is going to be a starter for the Mountaineers because the length he provides, because the experience he provides, and multiple of these guys that West Virginia have brought in over the past week are guys that have an extra year of eligibility because of the JUCO ruling, not counting towards NCAA eligibility, and so they hit the transfer portal for the final year of eligibility and are coming to the Mountaineers. So you're getting a really experienced batch of players as well that are trying to improve this defense with and improve this secondary with, and Justin Harrington, coming from Washington, is one to keep an eye on because he began his career at Oklahoma, played pretty extensively there, and then went to the JUCO ranks. And when he was at JUCO, he was the number 1 player in the country there at the JUCO ranks at the safety position. So this is a highly regarded safety there coming out of Washington. Great size, 6'3", over 200 pounds. So he could play your strong safety. He could also play potential to play in the box, maybe play that cheetah position. When you look at the way Zach Alley utilized that cheetah position in Oklahoma, it was kind of package based where he used multiple guys. He would have like a safety / linebacker body, like a Harrington here at 6'3", 209, and then kind of smaller slot corner types that, are 5'10", 180, 5'11", 180, and mix those in at the cheetah spot. So I think Justin Harrington could maybe play there, but excited about his addition as well. And then we had a linebacker addition, which is big because we know West Virginia lost, of course, Trey Lathan and Josiah Trotter, but Chase Wilson coming over from Colorado State is one that's probably going a bit unheralded because of the numbers that he's racked up in his career at Colorado State. And the one thing that stands out to me is when you talk hard edge, this guy's hard edge. Go watch, there's a video that's been floating around on social media. I believe it was the Rivals account on X that shared it. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. He's given, a hype speech to the team kind of in a huddle before the game that'll really get your blood going. He's got that leadership capability to his game, and then you watch the highlights and he's just all over the field racking up tackles. And he's coming over from Colorado State where he's totaled 234 tackles, 6 sacks, forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 interceptions, and 7 pass breakups during his career. So nearly 100 tackles in each of the past 2 seasons, which is phenomenal numbers to bring in and add to a linebacker room that you do return a little bit. You have Reed Carrico back, you have Ben Cutter back, and you add Chase Wilson into the mix to go along with Ashton Woods, who we talked about in our last episode a week ago. With Ashton Woods, you got a young guy, 3 years of eligibility, kind of high ceiling. And here with Chase Wilson, you get one of those really experienced guys with the final year of eligibility that's played a ton of college football that can help you a lot on defense as well. So West Virginia tries to rebuild that, and they're doing a great job of it. And then another really exciting addition that West Virginia picked up is a running back. And, when we talked about the other running back that West Virginia's added in this class earlier was out of the Division II ranks, LJ Turner, who was a bit more of a speed back, kind of a one-cut-and-go guy, really quick, kind of similar body style to Jaheim, similar frame, a little bit taller. And so we wondered, would West Virginia still want to add another power back? And then we found out they were targeting Ty Edwards from Northern Iowa, a very successful FCS program, and he's been a very successful FCS running back there. And so you're getting another guy that's coming for his final year of eligibility. And at the FCS ranks there, we're talking about a guy that had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. I think when you watch his film, what really stands out is I've heard a lot of people compare this. Obviously, they're saying this is, the CJ clone, the CJ replacement, whatever you want to call it, because they're similar in size, 230 plus pounds. But Ty Edwards, 6'4". Not too many running backs have that type of height. That's like that Brandon Jacobs, New York Giants style body. But what stood out to me and was eye-popping when you watch his film is he's got some speed despite that size. I think that's one thing that he has that makes him a little bit different than C.J. Donaldson is he has a little bit better speed when he gets into the open field, I think, which will be a great fit in the Rich Rod offense. Now, he's gonna play a ton, I think. I think him and Jaheim are going to be the go-to, and then maybe you mix in L.J. Turner and some of the young guys a little bit. There's going to be carries to go around, but I think it'll be fun to see, does he spell Jaheim? Do you do a thunder and lightning thing like that, or do you sometimes utilize some of those two-back sets like Rich Rod did when he was originally here, when you had Owen Schmidt as a dive man on a triple option look, and this time could Ty Edwards be that dive man on that triple option look, or sometimes you'd flip it and Slayton would be the dive man and you could have some fun with those two-back sets. We'll see how much Rich Rod decides to utilize that here this go-round, but he has some great options at the running back position, and Rich Rod really has some fun pieces to work with, and what we already know is going to be a dynamic offense. Of course, we love Jaheim White here at the CRW, and to get a guy, a power back, and Ty Edwards to complement him, 6'4", 230, with an outstanding career at the FCS level. Super excited about that addition as well. And then one of the more interesting additions that West Virginia's added is Kimo Makoli, who was coming from LSU. So there's another, one of those power conference additions that I think a lot of the fan base clamors for whatever reason. I think good players are everywhere is always my stance on it. But Kimo is interesting because he was highly regarded coming out of high school as an offensive lineman, a 4-star recruit, goes to LSU, plays there a couple of seasons, but then they flipped him over this past year and tried him on defensive line, and played there sparingly throughout this year at LSU, decides to hit the portal, so he's a guy with experience on both sides of the trenches, which is intriguing when we saw West Virginia targeting him, because West Virginia could use guys on both of those sides, and so it was interesting to see which one they would end up targeting, Matt. But from what I understand is he's going to be tried out on the offensive line. They're targeting him as an offensive lineman. You saw some people come out and say that after he signed on. You saw the assistant offensive line coach, Derek Dressler, say he's excited to work with him. So I think getting a power conference player and kind of moving him back to his more natural position that he was highly regarded at coming out of high school could pay benefits for West Virginia as they continue to, recruit offensive linemen. The offensive line was pretty decimated. That was one of the positions that was left, really thin after the transfer exodus. And now West Virginia's added, 3 offensive linemen in the past few days, the first one of which a transfer from LSU there, Kimo Makoli. And then next you have a really exciting addition to the other side of the trenches there that can really help come screaming off the edge for you in Braden Siders. This is a guy from Wyoming that, I think it was Arizona, I believe, that thought he committed to Arizona. There was a bit of a mix up there 3 or 4 days ago. It started being reports that he was going to commit to Arizona. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 days later, lo and behold, West Virginia had snuck him in on a visit without it even really being reported. There's a picture comes out of Rich Rod, smiling like the butcher's dog because he's so excited that he's gotten Braden Siders in here, and he commits to WVU. And it's a big pickup because it's a pass rushing specialist type of guy. 14 and a half sacks over the past 2 seasons. So I think you got a guy that can come in and maybe play situationally for you. Maybe he's good enough to be an every down player, but you get a fit at a spot where you really need it as an edge player. And West Virginia's targeting a couple more guys to helpfully help come off that edge. We'll talk about here in just a second. But still, we got 5 more names to talk about, guys. And what's fun about the final 5 that West Virginia brought in here of the 17 they brought in the past week, as we continue to cover these transfers coming in the offseason as West Virginia starts the spring semester, we'll get to see our first look at a lot of these guys in short order. But all 5 of these names came in 24 hours, in one day. All 5 of these guys committed to the Mountaineers. So that just shows you how hot and heavy these transfers have been coming in for WVU. The first one was Wyatt Miner, who is an offensive lineman, former, West Virginia native, an in-state guy, went to Youngstown State. Great size, 6'5", 300-plus pounds. Still has 3 years of eligibility remaining. I don't think he's coming in to, play immediately. He's going to be a guy that's a great depth piece for you, what you really need on the offensive line, obviously, with the way things have kind of panned out there. So that's a big addition. And also it's a guy that you can develop throughout your program. And we've seen guys like that you develop, throughout their time here really have great success, potentially, especially on the offensive line, not only going back through the history of WVU, but you can look just past just at this past season. Nick Malone, who was here, throughout his career, started as a walk-on, earned a scholarship, and then, played sparingly at different positions along that offensive line, finally gets his chance to start at right tackle this past year and grades out as one of the best in the conference and one of the better tackles in the country, actually, a lot of times in PFF grades throughout the season. So you never know what it can turn into, and Wyatt Miner could be one of those stories as West Virginia adds him from Youngstown State. But then an offensive lineman that's another in-state guy that I think has a much better chance of potentially playing early and factoring in right away in 2025 is Robbie Martin. Went to NC State after coming out of Huntington in high school. It ultimately goes there, which a lot of people thought maybe Marshall would be in play for him once he hit the portal with Tony Gibson, who was at NC State, being the head coach there, of course, and him being a Huntington native, but instead he wants to remain a power conference player, so comes to WVU where he's got a great chance as an interior lineman. West Virginia needs both guard and center, so we'll see where he factors in, but on the interior he's going to have a chance to factor into the two deep there. I think he was, of course, the number one player in the state of West Virginia coming out, and one of the top-rated interior offensive linemen in the entire country was Robbie Martin, so a nice pickup for West Virginia here to get a state native back home to hopefully finish his career as a Mountaineer. Robbie Martin joining in the fold. And then we get a JUCO addition from the wide receiver position in Davion Walker from Butler Community College. And this is a guy that when you watch the tape, good size, but he has the great ability on deep balls to, track it, to go up and get it, to high point the football, and has enough speed to be able to burn you and get behind the defense as well. Not a ton of grabs when you look at his numbers, but only played in 6 games and had over 300 yards on 19 catches. So that shows, the deep ball ability for Davion Walker, who I think could be a good addition for the Mountaineers. Was a power conference recruit coming out of high school, originally going to Vanderbilt before bouncing back to the JUCO ranks, and now a highly rated JUCO receiver. Will come into WVU and add to that receiver room, which will have plenty of guys in there competing for spots. We've added some transfers. We got some freshmen coming in, and we didn't lose a ton at the wide receiver spot. I know we lost most of our starters, but we do have, handful plus guys returning still to that position. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that competition shakes out. And then most recently, the last 2 additions, both defensive back additions for the Mountaineers, as West Virginia, like we said, continues to revamp that secondary. And one of the more underrated ones, I think, in this class, William Davis, because he's coming from a D2 spot in Virginia Union. So some people probably think, hey, he's going to be a reserve player. He's not going to, factor in right away. Hey, watch out for that. I think you might be underrating him a little bit if you're thinking that way, because William Davis was an absolute ball hawk at the Division II level. Reporting 12 interceptions throughout his career, which is great across, 3 seasons. That's averaging 4 a year. So that's incredible numbers. When you watch the tape, it's there. You see it, his ability to kind of pull the trigger and break on passes and either break it up or straight grab the interception and return some of them for touchdowns as well. So I think he's a good cornerback. He could maybe even play safety. We'll see what West Virginia uses him as. I think he could be cornerback, maybe work into the slot. Maybe him and Jordy Scruggs are the potential front runners to be the slot corner for West Virginia. Jordy Scruggs, one of the first commits, and William Davis, one of the most recent. But I really do like his addition. And then Devontae Golden Nelson, the most recent pickup, finally officially coming into the class over this past week. We thought we had him a few days ago, and then it officially comes in on Sunday that he commits to the Mountaineers, putting it out on social media. Was hoping it wasn't going to be a situation like that we talked about with Braden Siders, where Arizona thought he had him and then he ended up at WVU. West Virginia thought they had Golden Nelson a few days ago. Eventually it comes in a couple days later. And here's another defensive back joining the fold. Great experience playing at Akron there, and I know he's coming from Akron, but he has great experience there playing against some really tough competition. He played the likes of Ohio State, held his own, played the likes of Rutgers, held his own, high 60s PFF coverage grade, so better than most of the cornerbacks on West Virginia's roster last year. And, don't sleep on him. I think he could be in the rotation this upcoming season, so I know there's a lot of names to go over, but I wanted to go over each of them with you. The 17 that West Virginia have added since we've last had a chance to report on it, in addition to the 9 previous that we've covered to talk about the 26 current names West Virginia has committed. Those other 9 previous names: linebacker Ashton Woods, running back L.J. Turner, wide receiver Cyrus Straw, quarterback Jalen Henderson, tight end Jacob Barrick, wide receiver Gerard Bowie, offensive lineman Walter Youngbear, wide receiver Man Singleton, and defensive back Jordy Scruggs. So those are the 26 transfers in. Like we said, tip of the cap to the West Virginia staff, who's doing an awesome job. But who else may be still on the fold? There's 5 names that I have here as upcoming visitors, but a couple of caveats, or at least one big caveat here, I think, is Justice Finkley. I know he remains uncommitted at the time that I'm recording this, but I don't have the greatest feeling about him, just because West Virginia's already brought in a great edge player in Siders, who we just talked about. They've extended an offer out to Keenan Eck from the JUCO ranks, who's another great pass rusher who's kind of a similar position, and he was in on a visit, and I've got a good feeling about him, and I think if they secure him, and have already secured Siders, probably all signs point to Finkley maybe going to a different destination. We'll see what happens. But the names that have visited WVU still remain uncommitted and could commit to the Mountaineers any day now. Maybe the day that you're watching this, one of these names is already committed to the Mountaineers. That would be great to hear. But we have Adam Tomczyk, a defensive lineman from the JUCO ranks, Dallas Holmes, a tight end there as well. West Virginia has had in on a visit. We mentioned Keenan Eck from the JUCO ranks at Citrus College. And then my top remaining target in the portal is William Reed, an offensive lineman from Princeton. I don't have the greatest feeling about it. I think he's got plenty of suitors, can pretty much go anywhere he wants. Yes, he's from the Ivy League, but guys, he screams off the tape just how talented he is, especially in the run blocking things and pancaking people. Would be absolute starter on the offensive line and in contention for one of the best transfer additions for West Virginia thus far if they were able to land him. But I give West Virginia, maybe a 50% chance at him at this point. So the 2 that I feel the least confident about right now are Finkley and Reed, but Reed would be the biggest remaining pickup. This is just, of course, through this portal window. Like we said, more visitors, more offers will go out in the spring once that portal window opens and West Virginia adds more players after spring football. But for now, keep an eye out on these names and be on commitment watch, in my opinion, for Dallas Holmes, Keenan Eck, and Adam Tomczyk in the near future. Could be the late additions as the spring semester is about to start and West Virginia is adding names to the list here. There's the 26 transfers that will be on campus soon. Some may already even be on campus. And then we also, of course, have to talk about the true freshmen that will be enrolling early for the Mountaineers coming up. But before we get there, guys, I do want to take a second and talk to you guys a little bit about something that can help you here in 2025. New Year's resolutions are big. And I think one thing that should be big all the time, more so than New Year's resolutions, is your mental wealth. And mental wealth is a great concept that the great people of Magic Mind have really, pioneered. And what mental wealth is about, it's about investing in habits today that build your resilience for future challenges. It's kind of like creating a mental savings account. You can withdraw from it when life gets tough. And it's based on, 5 pillars. We're talking sleep, diet, exercise, stress management, and exogenous compounds. And Magic Mind can be a tool to help enhance your focus. And then they also now, of course, have another tool, the Magic Mind Sleep, that will help improve your sleep as a part of this bigger strategy to help improve your mental wealth. And these tools are the little things that can help you move in the right direction here in 2025 with the new 24-hour pack. And you guys have heard me talk about regular Magic Mind all the time. I've been a big proponent of it for a long time. You see my pack sitting up here behind me on the shelf. It's great to help you throughout your day. It's going to give you time-released caffeine, so it's not only going to help you right away. You can pair it with your caffeine, but it gives you caffeine intake throughout the day to last you throughout the day, so no crash there, and it does it through all natural ingredients that are going to help improve your focus, help reduce your stress, 100% safe, validated by doctors, also helps, mental health charities with each bottle purchased, so a lot of great factors there, and of course they also give you 100% money back guarantee, so no risk involved for you. But in addition to the great classic Magic Mind, that's only part of the equation, of course, is getting through your day to be able to attack it in the best way possible with the best mental clarity, the best focus that you can with Magic Mind. But if you don't get the great sleep at night, the 6 to 8 hours, you're not really investing in that mental wealth like you should. That's a big part of it. So now they also have added, of course, the Magic Mind Sleep that's going to help you to get to sleep at night when you want to and get that full 6 to 8 hours that you need, get as much sleep as you need there to help you invest in that mental wealth. And now you can get that 24-hour pack from us here at the CRW with 45% off. So nearly half what you would pay normally. You can get 45% off with our code here at the CRW. Get that Magic Mind bundle. Just head to magicmind.com/countryroadsjan. That's, of course, Country Roads, JAN. magicmind.com/countryroadsjan to get 45% off the Magic Mind bundle. It's going to really help you guys get through your day, get the sleep you need at night, and then you can invest in to your mental wealth the way that you should. Much like West Virginia is investing in their roster here, building it through 2025 via the transfer portal, but also, of course, they did a great job keeping a lot of the high school commits in tow. They only really lost one that we learned of recently, that being DeAndre Desanor, who flipped to NC State late, but still 20-plus high school commits for the Mountaineers, with nearly half of those enrolling early, as you see here on our list that we will let you know about the early enrollees, some of which have already made it to campus, I think, as the spring semester starts this week for the Mountaineers, and these guys will be involved, getting a jump start and participating in spring practice. As you see the list, for those of you that are tuned in here to the video version, but for you guys tuned in on the audio side, those names, of course, are quarterback Scotty Fox, the lone quarterback addition to West Virginia's class, but is a big addition as West Virginia only has, 2 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster currently. You're adding a transfer in Jalen Henderson, who we just discussed, and then you're adding Scotty Fox, a freshman, as well. You'll have a couple of defensive linemen, or I guess a trio, I should say, of defensive linemen joining and enrolling early. You've got Wilnerson Telemock, 6'6", 257-pounder. Amir Leonard Jean-Charles, more of an interior defensive lineman there at 6'4", 305. Ramondo Johnson, who will come off the edge there at 6'3", 250. Brandon Homedy is an offensive lineman enrolling early. You do have a couple offensive linemen enrolling early. Linebacker Michael Hasty will be here on campus, 6'3", 230 pounds. Chris Filippo, a 6'3", 210-pound. Got him listed as defensive back. Maybe they use him a linebacker. We'll see how he factors in with this staff. I think maybe could be a candidate for that cheetah position. We'll see. The previous staff was recruiting him for that spear spot. And then another interesting addition here is Gavin Crawford, 6'4", 300 pounds. That good counsel pipeline we've talked about. West Virginia is also adding another offensive lineman from that in this class, and Aiden Buchanan, who's an awesome size, 6'9", 300-plus pound guy, but he'll be coming in over the summer. But getting Gavin Crawford in early, I think, is big. West Virginia lost, Kyle Altuner, who was from that same high school, to Virginia Tech, who was maybe going to factor into the competition at center. And I know it's hard for true freshmen to play right away, but getting a jump start could help that. Having good size can help that with Gavin Crawford, and West Virginia needing interior linemen could help as well, because the guy that followed up Kyle Altuner as the center at Good Counsel High School was Gavin Crawford. So maybe Gavin Crawford could come in, compete with Landon Livingston at the center spot, maybe end up on the 2 deep there. We'll see what happens. I think he'll be in play at center or guard with him enrolling early. Defensive end Brandon Caesar coming onto campus early as well, 6'4", 255 pounds. And then tight end Jackson Accardi, I think, is good to get him on campus. West Virginia needing bodies at the tight end position. That competition's kind of wide open there. Great size as a freshman. We see him coming in with similar size to what Jackson Marco did, a little bit thinner in frame, a little bit slighter, but 6'7", 230 pounds. Great to come in with that frame and to come in early, get to go through winter conditioning is good for him to maybe potentially play early. We didn't expect Jackson Marco to, so you never know what could happen. And then Zaw Jackson out of Huntington, listed as an athlete, of course, in the recruiting process, 5'10", 180, but being recruited as a defensive back. So another defensive back addition that you can add here that'll be in for spring ball. And pretty cool that Zaw Jackson played high school football with Robbie Martin at Huntington, and those two getting to reunite now as Zaw Jackson enrolling early. And of course, we just talked about Robbie Martin coming in via the transfer class. So wanted to update you guys there on a bit of what the roster may start to look like, and I'll continue to do roster updates on the YouTube channel as these guys do enroll and get added to the university's official roster as spring practice approaches. But those are the transfers that West Virginia have been doing a great job of recruiting in the portal, and of course some of the early enrollees you can expect to participate in spring football practice as well. But let's talk a little bit about the coaching staff now and how it's shaped up as multiple official announcements have come out. This is kind of where we stand. Of course, Rich Rod with the head coach role. Zach Alley, the highest paid assistant in WVU football history, stealing him from Oklahoma to be the assistant head coach / defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. Jack Bicknell Jr. will be your offensive line coach. Jeff Castile will be coaching the Bandits on the defense, which is essentially kind of the outside linebackers from what I understand. Gabe Franklin will be coaching the safeties. Great recruiter, great coach coming from Boise State. Ryan Garrett will be coaching the wide receivers. William Green will be coaching the defensive line. Pat Kirkland will be the special teams coordinator and a defensive assistant coach and has done a great job with special teams throughout his career. Michael Nicewander will be the tight ends coach. Rhett Rodriguez, young Rhett Rod, will be the quarterbacks coach at WVU. Chad Scott will remain running backs coach for the Mountaineers. Blaine Stewart will coach inside receivers, which factors to probably be a key position. Rod West will be the cornerbacks coach coming from Appalachian State, another great recruiter, and I think will do a great job in the West Virginia secondary. Mike Joseph remains on staff as the head coach for strength and conditioning and assistant athletics director. We've had Jake Castile join as an assistant defensive coach. We've had Noel Devine join as an offensive analyst and the assistant running backs coach. Derek Dressler is the assistant offensive line coach. Chris Herring is the assistant special teams coordinator, of course, on linebacker on the great 88 squad. Ryan Nealon will remain on staff. And then we also have the addition of Andrew Warwick, who is a senior defensive analyst and assistant linebackers coach. Henry Weinreich has been hired as the Nichols/Sam's coach. Warwick coming over from Wofford, where he was defensive coordinator. Henry Weinreich, Nichols Sam's coach, coming up from Jack State. So I think getting, a guy like Andrew Warwick to be a senior defensive analyst when he was previously a successful defensive coordinator at multiple stops shows the money that you're having when you're able to make hires like that to kind of your support staff even. And then, of course, Dusty Rutledge, chief of staff, Cole Dial, assistant athletics director, Chuck Lilly recently announced the general manager, Rasheed Marshall remains director of player relations as some of the other new additions. But there will be some more official announcements coming out. We'll see how many more, kind of support staff members. But one of the main additions that we're awaiting, and this one could come out today, the day I'm releasing this podcast. We'll see what happens even. But we do know of what his title is probably going to be, courtesy of Mike Kazaza, as he shared Travis Trickett, who we knew would be joining the staff. His title will probably be senior offensive assistant, which yet again goes into the money that I talked about that West Virginia is able to put behind things. You bring in a guy that's been a defensive coordinator, be a senior defensive assistant in Andrew Warwick, so you're having to pay him well. And then Travis Trickett, you're bringing in a guy that's been an offensive coordinator previously, so you're having to pay him well to be a senior offensive assistant. So West Virginia just formulating a home run staff, in my opinion, and the salary pool is beyond the $5 million that we knew would at least be allotted. So I guess we know the $5 million is a minimum. So this just shows the investment, and I think here on this episode you've learned the investment West Virginia is making in the roster, being able to have the money to bring in some big-time transfer portal names and bring in a lot of transfer portal names, and the staff as well as it continues to build here throughout the offseason. I love the way that both of those things are shaping up for the Mountaineers. So that's what I had for you on the football side of things. I know that's lengthy, but knew it would take up the majority of the episode talking about 17 transfer additions that have happened over the past week, but wanted to let you guys know where things stood in that aspect and, of course, how the coaching staff is shaping up. Expect Travis Trickett's official announcement at any hour or any day, and then we'll see what other official announcements come out as West Virginia's building kind of an NFL staff with, well over 20-plus members, which is pretty interesting, and we'll see which one are designated as kind of the 10 guys that go out and recruit. I definitely expect Travis Trickett to be involved there, and with him on board with the staff, recruiting in the South should skyrocket. Georgia, South Florida, going to be big pipelines for WVU again, and don't factor out Noel Devine, being able to play a role there. But Mountaineer football continues to build to what they hope to be a successful 2025, and I believe can and will be with Rich Rod at the helm and everything looking as positive as it is with the roster, the transfers, and the staff. But West Virginia basketball is already in the midst of what looks like to be a very successful season. I think exceeding the expectations of many with what they've done thus far, reaching the top 25 this week, played a couple of games this week. Let's talk a bit about the Mountaineer basketball team now before we wrap up this episode, guys, as they now sit 12-3 following a victory on Sunday on the road over Colorado. Currently number 21 in the poll at the time I'm recording this. I know today, the day that I'm probably releasing this episode, the AP poll releases. Hopefully after splitting games this week, West Virginia still remains in it. Maybe they'll be around 25 or so, or maybe just outside. We'll see what happens. But nonetheless, you can't say enough about the job Darren DeVries and company have done with all the hurdles they've had to overcome. Tucker DeVries appears to be on his way to a medical redshirt and out. No Jaden Stone. They've had to deal without Imani Hansberry for a little bit, without KJ Tenner in the past couple of games. So really short roster, playing 7-8 guys, getting guys in foul trouble to then where you're playing, 5 or 6 guys even, and still finding ways to get it done and be competitive in every game pretty much. And then also finding ways to win in games where you could have a ton of excuses and have ways to not get it done and reasons to not get it done. They find ways to do so. And a lot of guys have stepped stepped up along the way, but you just got to credit Darren DeVries, who I think is a hell of a basketball coach. 12 wins, already exceeding last season's win total. You already have a couple road wins in the Big 12, which has exceeded, I think, the past couple of seasons, according to Tony Caridi on the radio broadcast. So 12-3 West Virginia is, and I believe 2-1 in the Big 12, or is it 3-1 now, if I'm not mistaken? Let's see here. Yeah, 3-1 now after the win over Colorado. So recently, you lose to Arizona 75-56, which in Morgantown, weather was a factor. The Coliseum, not what it usually is, but also we knew that the revenge would play a factor in that one, with West Virginia already beating Arizona in the Bahamas. Tucker DeVries played a big part in that win over the Bahamas with 24 points, hit 8 threes in that game. So without him, Arizona's able to attack West Virginia a little bit, and dealing with some injuries there. No KJ Tanner the past couple of games hurt West Virginia, but the Mountaineers go on the road and bounce back. Last game with a win over Colorado, 78-70. Javon Small continues to be a Player of the Year candidate, had 26 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds in that game. And then I think you had some other guys that have really stepped up lately. Eduardo Andre being a huge one of those that have stepped up. What a performance by him in the past few games. And then most recently against Colorado, you got to give a tip of the cap to Joe Yesufu, who's playing some really good basketball in that one. He had 18 points. Did a great job stepping up on defense in the end when Buck Harris fouled out, the West Virginia's best defender. He played some good defense down the stretch and really was kind of the go-to guy, hit some clutch shots. When it wasn't Javon Small down the stretch, it was Joe Yesufu. So he had a great performance there to get West Virginia that 12th win on the road. The Mountaineers now stay on the road, go play a couple of tough ranked opponents. One on the road against Houston. Who's number 12 in the country. They'll play them Wednesday night on the 15th at 8 p.m. And then you come back home to play what is currently the number 3 team in the country, who's absolutely rolling, the Iowa State Cyclones. So I thought West Virginia would do well to maybe split these 2 road games. They've already at least accomplished that with a win on against Colorado, if I could get that out correctly. If they could get a win at Houston, that would just be the cherry on top there. We'll see what happens. But I think that this team is certainly already proven to be a tournament team, which was kind of my bold prediction heading into the year. A lot of people disagreed with that. I think that's proven to be the case. And when you look at the remainder of the schedule, I think that there are, at least 6, 7, 8 games this team will probably be favored in, or you could consider toss-ups. So I see no reason we're not looking at a potential 20-plus win West Virginia team if, knock on wood, no other crazy injuries or anything occur. I think that, KJ Tanner should be back for this next game. Hansberry is getting closer to be 100%. Don't know the status of Jaden Stone. We'll see if he decides to remain out the whole year. As far as Tucker DeVries is concerned, like I said, I'd be more surprised if he returned than if he took the medical red shirt at this point. I think last game was the last game he could play in and still red shirt, so it looks like he's probably on his way to that, because if he plays again, he won't have that medical red shirt. We'll see what happens. As far as the team leaders, Javon Small leads the team in points, and I believe leads the Big 12, nearly 20 points per game. 5 assists per game, 5 rebounds per game, 2 steals. Just can't say enough about how well these performances. Should be a Player of the Year candidate, not only in the conference, but nationally. Tucker was averaging 15 points per game before his injury, of course, 8 games into the season. Or, of course, I guess it was already kind of lingering him. It was the shoulder he had surgery on throughout the offseason, but really just never got back to 100%, I guess, and maybe trying to rest it and see what can happen if he can take a medical redshirt. We'll see. Hansberry finally coming back after, missing a game there. 10 points for him. He averages on the season, 6 rebounds, nearly a block or a steal per game and half a block per game. Ed Andre has been the big story here. 2 blocks per game, nearly 6 points and 5 rebounds. And he's absolutely stepped up in a huge way since Hansberry's been out and has looked like an excellent player. You got the freshman Jonathan Powell averaging 9 points per game, shooting the basketball really well. Toby O'Connie, a bit of a mixed bag, but when he steps up and plays well, it really makes the team as a whole step up and play a lot better. 8 points on the season for him, 4 rebounds, nearly a steal per game and an assist per game. Buck Harris, of course, continues to be your best defender. He's going to guard the opponent's best player every night. And then some of your bench players that have stepped up are Joe Yesufu recently, and then KJ Tanner, once he comes back, I think will continue to be a force there. And then you got another guys that'll play handful of minutes when you need to, that'll play sparingly. The walk-on Jake Auer, who can shoot the ball, but unfortunately
leaves a little bit to be desired on the defensive end. Harris Lezovic can help, in the paint when you need another big man if you get into a foul trouble situation or you need a couple minutes there. And then Aiden Nelson, of course, back on the roster now that football season's over. He's back on the basketball team and could maybe contribute some minutes there sparingly as far as kind of the guys that have been the guys for WVU. So wanted to take a look at them as they have, some tough games coming up on the schedule, but then things really kind of lighten up in the back half where West Virginia should probably reel off some good wins there. And I think, like I said, we could be looking at a 20-plus win West Virginia basketball club, which then you're looking at, getting a 7 seed or higher in the tournament probably, which could set you up for some good things there if you're healthy at the right time. And this team, in the way the West Virginia plays, could maybe have a run in March. We'll see what happens, but very pleasantly surprised with Darren DeVries in year one, what he's done with the Mountaineer basketball program, and the sky is the limit moving forward because, like we said, dealing with injuries, doing what he's doing with a short roster, you just can only be excited, especially when you look forward at some of the prospects they're bringing in next year. Braden Hawthorne really stands out. I think 3-4-star guys already, and who knows if you can get Tucker back as well. We'll see, but the future is bright for Mountaineer basketball, I think, so wanted to take a second here at the end of the episode and thought that bared mentioning, but that's pretty much what I wanted to discuss, guys. I think we're talking about a bright future for the Mountaineer football team. We're talking about a bright future for the Mountaineer basketball team, but we'd love to hear your all's thoughts on either. If you tuned in here on the YouTube side, be sure to throw your thoughts in the comments. Really appreciate those interactions. And also, if you're watching that video version on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That helps us a ton with the algorithm. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can stay up to date with the Mountaineer football offseason news, roster updates, transfer portal updates, recruiting, coaching staff, all of that good stuff you can find here. But we appreciate you listening on the audio side as well. You can find it on any podcast platform, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. And if you listen there, leave us a rating. That helps us a lot, preferably a 5-star one if you would. And shout out to our friends over at WVSportsNow.com for hosting our episodes on their website as well, if I could get that out correctly here at the tail end. Sorry, guys, been babbling too long, but we had a lot of news to cover when your team brings in 17 transfer commits in 1 week and is up to 26 in the class, and a lot of them that I'm really excited about. So hopefully I didn't wax poetic about them too long there, but I hope you guys enjoyed episode 215 of the CRW podcast as we've covered some of this transfer frenzy for the West Virginia football team. But appreciate you guys. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz. We'll be back next week with another podcast episode to update you guys. You can stay tuned to the YouTube channel for further coverage in the meantime and in between time throughout that week, but we'll bring you a recap of the news that has occurred throughout the Mountaineer football program and probably talk a little bit more Mountaineer basketball next week on episode 216. Appreciate you guys tuning into this one. As always, until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those